Hello and welcome back. We're going to be taking a look at the top 10 players from Masters Madrid as predicted by Platchat, Sliggy and Co. Let's do a quick recap. So, starting off, we're going to look at the method. Method is going to be the same as we did for Champions. VLR's rating. The error is the difference between actual and predicted. Useful, we're going to take the magnitude because we don't want to reward people for underrating players. Average is self-explanatory, and we're going to rank from the least error to the most, so less error is better. So this time we've only got 13 challenges. It was a pretty speedy put together list. I took Sliggy's from his YouTube, and the rest of them I was able to get with the help of Kurt. Big thanks to him for that. And I decided I should throw my own hat in the ring, down on the bottom right, since if I'm judging everyone else, it only makes sense to judge myself too. So let's get started. We have our list. I'm afraid in last place we've got Seth Achilleos coming in. We had a couple of EDG players on his list, and also the rating of QCK within the top 10 was very punishing as the worst performing loud player at the event. It's a tough pill to swallow there. His APAC compatriot Paperthin coming in 12th. Again, the addition of Chichu to some of these lists was really struggling, and with EDG going out first, and certainly anyone who put any FPX players on really struggled. Speaking of the Chinese region, we've got Ryan, who maybe fell prey to the same thoughts, having been watching all of those games, but unfortunately, the Chinese and APAC team make up sort of a bottom row here. So stepping up to number 10. Our top 10, as it were. Chobra, the last of our APAC crew, who managed to escape being stuck on the bottom row. Coming on TMV. TMV, making up the middle of the pack with some EMEA opium, which unfortunately was shattered with KC and Heretics plummeting out early on. Mimi and Sliggy suffering from very similar afflictions as they round out our 8th and 7th spots, creating a solid foundational row there. 6th place we have Wyatt. Wyatt down a couple of places, I think 1 or 2 from Champions, but with a significantly reduced number of people. That's almost a worse performance, unfortunately. I think one of the things that was interesting about this event was how the statistics didn't necessarily line up with the progression through the tournament. I myself come in here at 5, pretty respectable performance from me, I think, although I think I got very lucky with the level of performance seen by the Heretics and Common Core players I put on my list, despite the fact that they went out 0-2. I dodged a bullet there, as it were. And 4th overall, we have the whole combined Platchat ranking, which pretty impressively is well ahead of the overall sort of general placement. If you were expecting an average, you might have expected to see it around Wyatt and Sliggy's rank, but actually it jumps up into 4th, looking much better, and as we've seen consistently, Platchat has been better than the sum of its parts. But some of those parts did go on to excel, and coming in 3rd and 2nd, we have the caster duo themselves, Sideshow and Bren, punching up, improving, and really establishing themselves at the top of this pyramid. But not quite the best in the game. The best in the game is the man, the myth, the legend, Bala, coming in huge with an average error of only 5.75. Looking absolutely unbelievable, comparing that to the average that was at around 9.5. And unfortunately, Achilleos languishing at the bottom with an average error of 15 places. For context, that is with 8 teams of 5 players, so 40 players at the event. So, a random number generator should have an average error of about 20. So, one hell of a showing there from Bala, really crushing it. And here we can see the whole list written out in full. As you can see, it's all sort of very close. Unfortunately, we have a couple of sort of outliers at the bottom, but I think that will be explained as we get on to some of our next slides. So here you can see the distribution. We've clearly got that sort of very solid clump, and Bren really tight on Barla's heels. So this brings us to the underrated, overrated players. So the overrated players, I want to make it clear this is about VLR's rating, which is affected by a whole bunch of different things. And this is about where our analysts predicted incorrectly, not necessarily reflective of the performance of the players. So coming in at our sort of relatively less overrated players, we have Mind Freak and Quick, who, while being overrated very heavily, were only on 1 or 2 lists in the first place. So it's clear that most of the analysts weren't overrating these players. And, you know, the expectation to be playing in the top 10 is one hell of an expectation. And frankly, you know, it's not an insult for that to be overrated, right? Next up, we have Chichu. Chichu really hurt the APAC analysts. 27 places overrated out of a list of 40, with a being on almost a quarter of the list. It was a rough time. But for me, despite being not the mathematically most overrated individual, I'm going to have to put Texture as the most overrated individual at 92% pick rate. Actually, I've messed up those numbers. Texture was actually on every single list that I was provided with, and had an average overrating of 9 places, which means, you know, arguably, essentially not even in the top 15 as far as results went, but yet in every single top 10. So for me, that's got to be the highest overrating. Which brings us to underrated. Narrate, unbelievably, was somehow underrated despite being in pretty much everyone's top 4 at 100% pick rate. Right, was underrated by 2 places, and that is because he was our number 1 performing player of the event with some phenomenal showings against all of the teams. Genuinely, prodigy levels of performance that I don't think anyone expected coming into this season, except maybe Eng, looking a bit like a wizard at the moment. Next up, we had Miniboo. Miniboo wasn't on every list, but performed outstandingly, and was someone who, despite going out 0-2, managed to remain within the top 10 on the overall ratings. Really a phenomenal performance from him. But our most underrated player, who many of you may have guessed, was Tui's. Tui's at 15% pick rate. He was 4 places underrated even on the lists he was picked on, and 85% of our analysts didn't even have him on their list. And Tui's being the, I believe, 3rd best performing player at the event, or 4th. It's truly an incredible showing that no one, I think, saw coming. Some of this is reflected in VLR's rating. I've noticed a tendency for the lists that duelists performing well in their home region against weaker teams tend to make it very high on these lists, and then underperform in terms of rating against better teams. And you see some of the support players step up and really be representative. But ultimately, I think this is very much a test of VLR's rating system, because, you know, you have your Tens and Zekken not even making the top 4 as far as performance over the course of the entire event, despite winning the entire event and losing only 1 match in the whole thing. And I think something about that is not a perfect ranking system. Not that I have a better one at the moment. Maybe that's a project for later. And that brings me to the 16th player, or in this case, the 11th player, who was not on a single top 10 list. Not one player had them in their sights. And frankly, looking at the team's results, I wouldn't have expected it either, because the 11th player, who no one saw coming, was Rienz. Rienz was the 5th best player at the event by rating, which, as a team that went out 0-2, is an outstanding performance. Having played against Paper X and Sentinels, teams that made it to the lower finals and the winners of the event, to be the 5th overall rated player against those 2 teams, truly an incredible showing. And I have to throw an honourable mention into Munchkin, who went unbelievable sicko mode in that upper final and earned himself a 9th overall ranking. Truly incredible. Well, that's kind of it for me. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you found some of that interesting. If you're interested in some of the more detailed stats and graphics, come follow me on Twitter. And a big shout out to Platchat Podcast, because without them, I wouldn't have any lists to do a bit of a look at. Thank you very much for watching.